Hello, entrepreneurs and self-starters. This is Rick Phillips from Yeti, and you're listening to the Startup Sandwich Podcast, the show that unpacks the bread-winning basics, juicy-filled journey, and secret sauce of entrepreneurship. Let's go. Welcome back to the Startup Sandwich Podcast. In today's episode, we learn how Dr. Latchmi Raghunanan is reimagining medical treatments by delivering the drugs with fewer risks and none of the needle trauma. Drugs, fewer risks, and none of the needle trauma. This is already beginning to be a very curious episode. So, Latchmi, tell us a little bit about, I think we should start with your business, maybe let people know a little bit about what the business is all about.
Sure. So, Maman Biomedical, we're an early stage medical device startup. And what we're doing is we're taking fertility medications specifically, reformulating them and repackaging them into alternative formats. So right now, the current standard of care for infertility is 20 injections in 13 days. This sucks if you hate taking injections. And we're addressing that burden through our secret sauce here. Our product is microneedle technologies. So think contraceptive patches and nicotine patches, but more advanced than that. And so we deliver drugs directly into the body, bypassing traditional limitations associated with the skin barrier to deliver those drugs inside of the body.
Okay, I'm going to ask some general questions so our audience can get a sense of where the business is at as well. Is this nonprofit or for-profit?
For-profit.
Mm-hmm. And when did you register it?
We incorporated January 2024.
So pretty new.
Mm-hmm.
At what point, or maybe I should ask it this way, what made you decide I'm going to register and incorporate a business? This is what I'm going to do.
So I went through IVF, so our journey comes from my own lived experience, mine and my husband's. And we did 2 cycles of IVF, and each time I hated taking those injections, but the burden was more than those injections. And then our worlds collided. So lived experience, but here's the thing. I'm also a material scientist. I've spent a large chunk of my career working and developing similar technologies. So when I say it has to be better, I wasn't just thinking it. I knew that better existed and that I could make it. And after about a year of complaining about this, I said, let's start this. And within 2 weeks of thinking, I can solve this, let's start this, I said, I'm going to go all in. Let's actually get this incorporated. So by the end of the month, when I say, I convinced my husband, can we do this? Can we do this? Let's do this. And then I'm like, okay, we incorporated 2 weeks later and jumped both all in, both feet in.
Wow. How did you build the team? Because that's a question that a lot of entrepreneurs have because, as you know, but as a lot of our listeners probably know, to start off, you need to develop a board of directors, right? And so I think a lot of people ask themselves, who should I pick? Should it be family or friends? Should it be strangers? Should it be like have one doctor, have one lawyer, have one accountant? Like, how did you make a decision? How'd you put your board together?
So I have a board of advisors, and I chose people who complemented our skill sets. Not people who knew what I knew, but people who knew what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And people who knew what I needed to know to get to market.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the board of advisors, for those that may not know, is often an easier step, a much less complicated, especially legal, less complicated step that can either be in lieu of a board at the beginning or it can complement a board of directors. And it's really good advice. Essentially, you can take mentors who are already giving you free advice and all that stuff for people you have a relationship with and ask them to be a member of your board of advisory. Is that essentially what you did?
Yeah. So we formalized it. In our case, we give equity for this relationship. And we've signed contracts and we expect, so there's expectations.
Yeah.
They get equity in return.
It's a win-win, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they're probably going to give you some knowledge anyway, but by having some skin in the game and by getting some equity, now they're really going to do their best to help the company grow.
Exactly.
Great. So what were the first steps after you incorporated and you said, okay, here we go. Did you have an idea of, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, or was it like, I'm just going to, first step is announce to the world? Did you build a website? Did you talk to hospitals? Like, what was your first step?
My first step, because I'm coming from this world and I'm a scientist and I know the product development roadmap, that was the very first thing I did. I built out our product development roadmap. The steps that we need to take to see this product through, what regulatory would look like. So I knew already at high level what the big milestones were going to be. Build that roadmap and looked at where they were in our timeline. And then build the complementary business plan to accompany that. And while I was doing these, concurrently, I was applying to every accelerator and incubator that would, that I could find doing the research, because those were very, very early days.
Why did you want to join an incubator or an accelerator?
Because while I knew technically what needed to be done to build a product, I didn't know what needed to be done to make a company, to build a company and take a product to market.
And so what did you learn on your journey with the incubators and accelerators?
Oh, so much pitching, storytelling, all of these skill sets that complements our own. And, I've embraced every opportunity that we could get our hands on, joined a lot of incubators, including the YEDI program. And throughout all of these, I make sure that it's focused, targeted growth, that, it's not the same thing that we're doing each and every time from the different programs. So I go in and eyes on that bigger vision that I have, that roadmap, and with each program, where we are in that journey, what's the next stages upcoming, and what should we be learning?
It's interesting we talked about the roadmap. And there are some people who say, well, we should have a 5-year business plan, for example. Or some people say, well, I need a 3-year financial plan. So there are some people, entrepreneurs or business people, that definitely believe in some type of roadmap. Are you flexible with yours? Is your roadmap the vision and you're finding ways to complete it? Or is it like a business plan, more of a living document that changes according to what's happening in reality?
I'd say it's a bit of both. Because we're in the medical space, there are things that we can't negotiate on, like the regulatory that's fixed. But there are aspects of it I've been able to move, restructure, reorganize, because we're very early stage and I'm thinking strategic. Trying to get a lot of things done without funding, with limited resources. And so it's big vision, but project management plan also. Not working linearly. What can I be doing concurrently to maximize time, to accelerate and, basically de-risk as much as possible, not just technically, but commercially, strategically as we grow. So that's where it's really flexible and mobile. But at the same time, we can't, you figure out your regulatory roadmap and that's set in stone.
I'm going to speak a bit general as a person involved with entrepreneurship myself and with YEDI. I find a lot of entrepreneurs that we meet that are in the medical space, in the Canadian healthcare space. Maybe they've got an app to do this, maybe they've got a service for that. Oftentimes these businesses are very difficult to come to fruition because the government is the government, and because the healthcare system is the way it is, and it's hard to move. So I'd like to know your experience with regulatory aspects of it, or just trying to provide a service that I guess complements the healthcare system, but dealing with it, because as I said, there's a lot of people with great ideas and great intentions that get a lot of roadblocks put up when it comes to the Canadian healthcare system. What's your experience?
Again, because I come from the inside already, and so I've known early on that you need to have clinical buy-in. Our problem solves a problem from the user perspective, from the patient perspective, but I've not lost sight that it's the doctors who prescribe this, so they are still gatekeepers. I need to have clinics buy into our products early on, and so that's, I think, something a lot of people overlook when they're planning to get their products into market. You can build a great product, but if the clinics aren't implementing it, then it goes nowhere. And it's not just the doctors who want it. Doctors can want your product, but who's responsible for buying? Who is the signing authority there? What are the roadblocks getting in their ways? So you have to be solving everybody's problem to get everybody interested, even though at the end of the day, it's the user put in. At the end.
Is this a B2B model, a B2C model, a bit of both, right?
B2B2C.
B2B2C. So you've got to make sure that the clinics are happy and they have buy-in. You've got to make sure the doctors are willing to essentially sign off on it and use it. And you've also got to make sure that the end user, the customer, the hopeful mothers, I suppose, that they would also be interested in doing that, right? So when you're creating your pitching, when you're creating your business plan, when you're creating your marketing, you've got 3 different target markets in mind, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
How's that for you?
And investors.
And investors, of course. Let's not forget the investors. So how do you keep your head straight about that and make sure that you're delivering the right message to everyone?
So right now, this is exactly where I'm at right now because we're getting ready to relaunch our fundraising campaign, and I've just done this homework to segment messaging for different audiences. And it's about, so I lead our social media campaigns too. Messaging, basically my guiding principle is how can I consolidate these messages without being overwhelming while still speaking to the unique audience and keeping that message there.
And I want to just make sure I'm understanding this right. What I think is that when someone's creating the marketing materials and the social media materials for their business, that they're coming up with, we call them power phrases or common phrases that are useful in branding. And that, so the theme of your business is everywhere. However, the sentences and the exact words and stuff might change according to the different mediums. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You're trying to find this kind of a brand identity that can be in all of them, at the same time targeting it towards the investor or the moms or or I should say not just moms, but the parents, et cetera.
I like the term you used earlier, moms to be, or the hopeful moms.
Hopeful moms? Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about the thing itself. From needles to patches, or let's simplify the product itself. You don't have to give away any trade secrets or anything like that, but let people know a little bit more. I know we talked a little bit about at the beginning, but let's slow down and talk a little bit more about what is the unique value that your product is bringing to the market.
So if I reset the problem, it's not just the injections, but and putting it into context, that 20 injections in 13 days, that was my experience. Some women have to take as many as 50 injections in this 2-week period. Many people never even undergo fertility treatment because of the needles. Or those undergoing, I think that this is something they have to do. End goal, iron the prize as you want a baby. This is the hard part that you have to go through. Each injection, so there's now besides the injection, each injection delivers way excess hormones into the body than you actually clinically need. And that has to do with the chemistry and biology of the molecules. They don't last long once you inject it. But so that you're not injecting every 30 minutes. 24 hours is a big thing compared to 30 minutes. You have to inject that huge payload. And so our technology addresses these, and it also addresses when you're doctors and nurses who see this every day, they don't think about this part of the journey. Having somebody who has never given themselves an injection, you have to go home and look at this needle, and there's this hype to overcome to say, it's not, even if you have no fear of the needles, to work yourself up to stick yourself, that also takes something. And then at each part of that, there's so many points I've calculated, 220 points in an entire cycle, at which you can make a mistake that could ruin that entire cycle. And remember, women undergoing fertility treatment are often racing against a clock, so time is important. Each of these you pay out of pocket for. It's expensive. Medications cost in addition to seeing the doctors. So it's a huge burden if you make a mistake and that cycle fails. Thinking about all of those. So those are the 3 core propositions that we address in needles. The probability that you make a mistake that ruins that cycle, as well as the amount of hormones that you have to inject. And now what we do is, instead of an injection, we're entirely reformulating that, using, again, my chemistry background, to put these into our needle-free patches. And so you stick a patch on, that eliminates a lot of the workflow that's associated with the needles. Also, in our reformulation, we eliminate or we reduce the amount of hormones that you have to put in. So we can basically get the same efficacy with less. And that's what we're doing.
And it's interesting because I think everyone can understand that when we say something like, Oh, so instead of having a bunch of needles, you have a patch,
Hmm.
even on that simplistic level. And then the next question might be, hasn't anyone thought of this before?
And when I say this, it's like I get asked a lot, like, why doesn't this already exist? Why has no one thought of this? And even when I did my fertility treatments, it was my same reaction. Why doesn't this exist? Because again, like I say, I've worked on similar technologies in the past. I looked across to other areas of medicine that I know, diabetes. There's so much innovation in the diabetes space. And I looked back at fertility and there was no innovation in the fertility space.
So it was ripe for the taking. It needed that innovation. And it's interesting. And this is maybe a conversation we don't have to have, but the idea that in some spaces in the healthcare, there is this innovation, maybe an openness to it. In other spaces, there isn't. It's slower. So now that you have created this, how is the Canadian healthcare industry in terms of the fertility side taking it? Are they opening you with welcome arms? Are they nervous? How are you approaching that?
I'd say right now the industry is very welcoming, and with so much innovation now happening around the space. So in the drug delivery space, we're the only ones there right now. But in hormone in general, in all of the associated spaces around the user experience, telehealth, lots of startup in the fertility space and reproductive space, that I've seen in the last 2 years pop up. So basically, I'd say the industry is very welcoming for change. Yeah, patients want it, consumers, the industry itself, people want change.
Let's talk a bit about where you're at now with Maman Biomedical on that roadmap. So at what stage are you now? For example, is this still market research? Are you in clinical trials? Are you doing this already? Are there patients that are using your treatment? Let us know a little bit about where you're at.
So yeah, I've got aggressive plans to bring our first product to market in 2 years. Now, for medical device startup, I have to say aggressive because to bring a product to market in 3 years is, especially in our case, we're class 2. I get a lot of heads turn at me when I say this, but look at what we've done in the year and a half since we've been founded. I do believe we can bring this to market in 2 years. Patients want it, we can deliver. We're working to deliver it.
Right.
So that's where we are, and lots of work to get that first product there. And so now we're looking at fundraising, at the regulatory milestones, while delivering on those, at manufacturing. So we've prototype. We've got our prototypes, functional prototypes, and we're at the stage now where we're moving and working on the user features to move from prototype to lock in a form factor that we can take to manufacturer and say, make this at the scales now that we want, that we can go do our studies on. Clinical studies,
Right.
which we need for FDA applications.
So prototype is very important. Let's talk a bit about fundraising. A lot of entrepreneurs, of course, are thinking about money. And a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, they kind of have this idea of, if I get a lot of money, whether it's my own or whether I borrow it or get it or steal it or whatever, if I get a lot of money, I'll be able to do everything in the first year. And it's almost like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I guess I'll speak from my experience. It's almost like a curse. If entrepreneurs actually do get a ton of money, whatever that means, according to their business, in the first year, they often blow through it in the first year. And then they don't have the sales to back up what they thought they would have, these amazing sales after year one, but they often don't. And so in some ways, it's good not to have a ton of money at the beginning. And I'm generalizing here. So without being too specific, I want to know your experience with fundraising, or with this idea of, these discussions with your board. What are we going to do in terms of bootstrapping versus asking the maybe government funding? There's angel investors out there. There's banks. There's BDC. Tell us a little bit about how you're handling the fundraising.
We're tapping into all resources. Right now, we're looking at the banks because banks are, I say right now, it's cheaper money than angel or investor money because you give up equity for those money. But we are looking to investors also, angels especially, or particularly at our stage where the angels come in. In terms of, we're very disciplined in terms of what we're raising and what we're going to use that money for, because each raise, especially it applies to all sectors, but in the life science, it's capital intensive. And like I said, long road to market. So our patch is going to be at least an 8 to 10 year timeline before we get that product to market, the flagship product. So very capital intensive. We're looking at spending over $30 million to commercialize the flagship product. That's going to take a lot of company. In terms of equity, we're going to have to give up a lot of money. And so when I say about discipline, how much we raise now and what we do with that and hitting the milestones to make sure that we have a company that remains investable at each round that we invest in requires that you're constantly keeping an eye on the bigger picture.
And I suppose you always have to have an idea of your valuation, right? Because each time you do get new funding, especially with investors, angel investors or other, there is this idea that potentially you're going to have to give up some sort of equity percentage. And so you want to have your idea of the valuation. They've got their idea, just like we see in these TV shows, right? With the entrepreneurs go on and they're asking for X amount of money for whatever percentage, and usually the negotiations over the percentages. So do you have someone on your team that is really good at the valuation aspect? Because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs would worry, how do they create or how do they get an accurate valuation of their company?
So no, right, we've learned everything. I've learned the financial aspects, this valuation part, but there are resources within the ecosystem to help. So Carter, it has been a huge resource for myself. We've done research, mentors, advisors, again, within the incubators. They can help point you in the right directions with people who can validate the assumptions that we make. I've tied our valuation very closely to milestones. So looking at the expectations that investors expect per round, and that's what you associate. So in my case, right? So it's not surprising. I've heard our valuation, different people speak already. Equivesto is a platform that we're currently using for the fundraise right now, and they did their internal validation. And it came right smack where I targeted to be.
Nice.
And that's because of the milestones that I set that says, a pre-seed round, you should be hitting X, Y, Z milestones. That's what we make sure we're hitting. So then when whoever is doing their due diligence sees that. So yeah, it's very outcome based on milestones.
It's amazing listening to you because you can clearly hear the business person and the planner, right? And the operations manager. You can just hear that in your voice. It's amazing.
Awesome.
And it has to be, right? It's a serious product. You have to be serious about it. I want to go back a little bit and ask you, and this is a bit of a selfish question, but why did you choose Yeti? What did you gain from Yeti? What was your experience with Yeti? Let's talk a bit about that experience.
Yeti was one of the earlier programs that I did, coming right out of my first incubator and my first win. But Yeti was and remains different to a lot of the other incubators that I've done since, in that it was very academic. And by academic, I don't mean it's a bad thing. I mean that it was so fundamentally deep that, I'm coming from a research background myself. So I resonated with it. But for someone who is technical like myself, going that in-depth, now, I guess a lot of what you hear. So I knew project management going in, but then complement that with all of the other things that we have to keep an eye on. It's not just high-level introductory to marketing. It's deep dive into what goes into marketing and what goes into a financial plan and the storytelling aspects and why storytelling is important. Very deep dives into these little, big disciplines that make up a comprehensive overview of the business.
Makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of education at Yeti in different aspects of running a business or entrepreneurship. And on top of that, there's these classmates as well, right? That you can, people in your cohort that you can talk to, alumni, mentors that maybe is through there, and then the other incubators and accelerators you attended as well. So it sounds like you've really built a really strong support system network. And then I guess you can use them when you need, so to speak, and tap them for things, whether they're advisory roles or others. Right? So talk a little bit about your journey on building your network, your professional network for this business.
Yep, that was a strategic decision. Again, so We were unique in that we were not founded or spun out from any universities. And you find a lot of deep tech startups are university spin outs, and they have that head start. A lot of the science is de-risked by the time they get to saying we're a real company. And so it's easier to raise money. Whereas ours was spun out from our kitchen countertops. That's our story. And so it was really hard to come by opportunities and resources early on. And I realized that I needed a community behind me. I looked at the other startups in the ecosystem and I'd apply for all of these, opportunities, funding programs, and realized that I kept seeing, the same companies getting those opportunities. And I said, I need to become one of those. And long story short, 18 months later, Maman is a very common or popular name now. We're well grounded within the ecosystem. We've worked hard. Every opportunity I've been saying yes to every single thing. So visibility has been important. Growing a community, establishing my brand, knowing what the company stands for, our authenticity, and that community. And so it's not always it's hard putting yourself out there. It's really tough, but you do it. Your community shows up when you need them over and over again.
Community is a very important word when we talk about entrepreneurship too, right? Whether that's people that would be your would-be customers, or whether that are people giving advice or feedback, people that support you. It's amazing that to have a community, because entrepreneurship is not really an easy life, is it? Right, a lot of stress and some ups and downs, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I think if we heard someone talking about it being really easy, I think we'd both be skeptical, right? Right. And so you're on this journey, and it sounds like you're all in. You're busy. You're doing things. You're building your community and your board. I want to ask a funny question. As a technical person, you announced yourself as a technical person. To explore this soft skills idea of branding and marketing and sales and pitching and storytelling, how was that something like interesting? Was that scary? Was that difficult? Because there are some times that these hard skills and soft skills really seem to be an ocean apart from each other.
It was definitely new to learn. It was new. I wouldn't say difficult, and very intensive. A lot I picked up along the way. But I'd say the technical aspects are the way I learn. So maybe that's driven by my technical nature. And the way that we've told our story, I've always been insistent that, I've worked with marketing people, and I kept fighting with my team early days. That's too fluffy. What is the real story behind this message? And that I've seen memes that say it's different when you speak to a product, or a product manager versus a marketing manager, and how they tell the messaging in their story. And I find that a lot of what I wanted came from the technical aspect, the product feature aspect. And so it's not just we're going to solve the problem for the world, but it's why, or what are we doing? For every message, there's a so what impact. And I've heard from our community that our story resonates, our messaging. Actually, more than one person has told me, if this doesn't work out and I need another career, I do have one in communications.
Nice. Now you're speaking my language. Very good. I think that's so important that entrepreneurs, whatever their background might be, technical background or other, that they understand that they need both the hard skills and the soft skills. They need that because if someone pitches a very technical oriented base, or let's say it's an app they're developing and they're talking all IT language, but nobody understands them. And by nobody, I mean the general population or the general investor, the general banker, then that great product may never get developed. And they're thinking, why? It's such a great product. Well, because we don't understand what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah.
And they may not. It's a gift if people will tell you that, because not everybody will tell you, right?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in here. Actually, and as you re-articulated there, I realized this was unique. This was a skill I learned during my PhD. So my PhD supervisor gets this credit here. Because my PhD was not just academic, it was very industrial focused. A lot of stakeholder engagement, but not just with the technical people who had to buy in, but we did a lot of community engagement too. And I got the opportunity to present my work as a scientist to non-technical audiences.
Great.
And I had to learn that skill, how to break down the science so that everyone will understand. So that's a skill that stayed with me over my entire career.
Did you do the 3MT pitch?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
So it's an inside story, but this is something when I teach at Yeti, I talk about the 3MT pitch. It's not my invention. It's the 3-minute thesis pitch. It's when students who are going through their master's or PhD need to take 3 minutes with one static slide and tell a general audience what their thesis is all about. And that's exactly what you had the opportunity to do, because it forces people, whether they're studying the next cure for cancer or infertility or the bird migration patterns, whatever it might be, can a general audience understand it? And the winners go on from inter-university to global competitions. So that's 3MT pitch or 3MT thesis for those entrepreneurs that want to see what that's all about. Because to me, it's the same. If an entrepreneur can't communicate simply their idea to a general audience, then that's something they better work on. Great. I'm going to start wrapping this up. I want to ask a question because we are talking about, the Startup Sandwich podcast. As you know, we talk about sandwiches. A good sandwich has a good sauce. For entrepreneurship, it's innovation, or it's literally a secret sauce, a secret formula. I know you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, but I want to go back this. If you had to put your finger on what is the secret sauce of your business, Maman Medical, what would it be?
I'd say, and this is not boasting, but it's me. It's because it's not just that we know how to solve this, but everything's come together at the right time. I'd say there's a lot in my background that's gotten me to this moment where I'm motivated to solve this problem. I know how to solve this problem, and now I have all of these hard skills and the soft skills to solve this problem.
Right.
Not just solve this problem, to build this company.
Right.
Successfully.
And sometimes, as Oleg said, time is nothing, timing is everything. And maybe the timing is just perfect, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Very good, Latchmi. Thank you so much for joining and chatting. The last thing I want to do is, if people want to learn more about you or Maman Medical, where can they find you?
So we're on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn. Find Maman Biomedical on LinkedIn. Our website also, as it's pronounced, mamanbiomedical.ca. Yeah.
Great. And I think that what you're doing is a wonderful service for the community as well, right? And there's a lot of couples that I think are very, very much looking forward to that 10 years to go fast where your product will be on the market. Thank you so much, Latchmi, for joining us. Really appreciate you joining us on the Startup Sandwich, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks so much, Rick.
Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you check out your podcasts. Until next time, keep turning small bites into big wins.